Ladies and gentlemen, mayhem enthusiasts and chaos connoisseurs, gather round. I've got a story that's juicier than Gotham's underbelly and more twisted than Harley's love life. Imagine this. You've got a friend, or so you think, who's tying the knot. But oh, surprise, surprise! Your invite must have gotten lost in the mail, or so they claim. Now picture yourself in this scenario. You're strolling through life, minding your own business, when you find out about this wedding from mutual friends. The nerve, right? So what do? You tell people you weren't invited. Simple, honest, and oh so satisfying. But oh, the chaos it stirs. The whispers, the gasps, the sudden shift in social dynamics. Am I wrong for spilling the beans? For letting the cat out of the bag and watching the delightful chaos unfold? Let's dive into this deliciously dramatic tale and decide if our protagonist was wrong, or just a master of stirring the pot. Buckle up, folks, it's going to be a wild ride. I've been working for my company for 7 years now, 5 of which have been spent on my current team. There are 15 people on it, and I'd say we're all pretty close, relatively speaking. I have a co-worker named Bob, who joined the team when I did. During the pandemic, he announced to everyone on a Zoom meeting that he was now engaged. Fast forward to this January, and Bob says that his wedding would be held in September of this year at a really beautiful winery. About 5 months ago, the invite started coming in for everyone on the team, but mine didn't. I waited a few weeks, but nothing came, so I went to Bob and asked if my invite got sent out. He gave me a solemn look, and then told me that I wasn't invited because of a spacing issue. He said he tried to make it work, but just couldn't, and hoped I didn't take it personally. He also said I'd be sure to get wedding favors and a piece of cake. He also asked me to keep it to myself, and please not make a big deal out of it. I honestly didn't know what to say, so I guess I just said okay and walked away. I won't lie, I was upset. I hate feeling excluded, and it was doubly worse because everyone else on the team was going except for me. And honestly, I really like weddings. They're usually very fun. I kept it to myself, but I wasn't happy. The day of the wedding came 3 weeks ago, and it went by without a hitch. Everyone on my team had a grand time and said it was beautiful. The food and party was great as well, and apparently everyone got a dozen fresh apple cider donuts to take home. I never did get that cake or wedding favors, BTW. At work the following Monday, my team member, Sherry, told me that everyone was confused as to where I was. Apparently, Bob said I was sick and couldn't make it. I was confused and then pissed. I straight up told her I wasn't invited, and left it at that. She looked shocked and asked me to confirm, and I said yes, I wasn't invited. Well, Sherry told someone because about 5 people asked me if I wasn't invited, and I said it was true. Today was Bob's first day back from his honeymoon, and it must have gotten back to him that I spilled the beans. He approached me in the break room, and he was upset that I told Sherry, and that it wasn't a big deal. I missed the wedding. I said, how would you like to be excluded from something everyone else is going to? We went back and forth for a bit before Bob walked away. I was pretty upset, so upset that my project manager came to ask me if I was okay, because she heard about me not being invited. I didn't want this to go this far, so I said yes. But other team members came up to me and said that Bob should have invited me, and it was wrong he didn't. Look, I realized that it was his wedding day, and he's allowed to invite who he wants, but I'm allowed to be upset that I wasn't invited, right? So Reddit, ATA for telling people I wasn't invited to the wedding and being upset about it? Edit. Sorry I forgot to put in the OP that I'm a 30 male. Edit 2. Wow, guys, thank you for all the support. My inbox is begging for mercy. I love a good story of social chaos and emotional turmoil, so let me get this straight. Bob the party pooper decides to cut you out of his grand affair and then expects you to play along with his little fib? Absolutely delightful. You see, There's a certain beauty in the madness of exclusion and deception. Bob had the gall to lie about why you weren't there, spinning his web of deceit. And now he's crying foul because you didn't keep his dirty little secret. Hilarious. You, my friend, are not the villain here. You were merely a pawn in Bob's little game. But then you flipped the board and revealed his true nature. Bravo! How deliciously chaotic. You're absolutely allowed to be upset. In fact, it's almost poetic. Bob's attempt to avoid a big deal backfired spectacularly. He wanted to keep the peace, but now he's the epicenter of drama. Isn't it ironic? So let's raise a glass to you for standing up for yourself and exposing Bob's hypocrisy. The truth is a wild thing, isn't it? Just like a good laugh, it tends to come out, whether people like it or not. Keep being your honest self, and let the chips fall where they may. I want to thank you all for the responses, especially for the wedding invites. Well, I have an update to this story, and it took an interesting turn. Bob and I were in the office today. He came to me and asked if we could talk. He asked if we could clear the air over some beers with his wife after work. I said, okay. After work, I meet Bob and his wife Pam in a bar. They both apologized for not inviting me and making me feel excluded. Bob apologized for lying and getting mad about it. The reason they didn't invite me is because they didn't want single guys at the wedding. They went to a big wedding back in 2019 that was ruined when a bunch of drunk single guys started hitting on the women there. A few of the boyfriends and husbands got pissed and it turned into a big fight. People were arrested and it completely ruined the wedding. I found it hard to believe, but they showed me a couple of Facebook videos of them at a wedding, and it looked the damn Royal Rumble going on. I was even shown a few Facebook statuses confirming their story. Pam said she was sort of traumatized by this and swore they'd have no single guys at their wedding. Well, the wedding came, and Pam stuck to her guns. Only family, couples, single women, or trusted single men were to be invited. Pam said that there were only about 10 single guys there, and they were all family members or groomsmen. She said the party turned out amazing this way since women didn't have to worry about being hit on. Pam said it truly wasn't personal and that she's so sorry for not inviting me, but would do it again. I asked if she and Bob didn't trust me enough to control myself. She said that Bob vouched hard for me, but she was sticking to her guns. The compromise was that she'd have to explain it if anyone asked, and that Bob got to choose the honeymoon destination. Curiously, she said that she had a sister around my age, and I was just her type, and she wanted to keep her away from me. I was a little offended at that, but she says that it's for my own good. Her sister is a little bit of her words, not mine, and she didn't want her to get her hooks in me. Again, her words. Bob said he should have handled it better, and he wanted to be honest, but it wouldn't have made much of a difference, so he hoped I wouldn't mind as much. Plus, he figured I wouldn't want to go to a wedding as a single guy anyway. I told them I was kinda hurt. They thought I would act like a creeper at their wedding. Pam assured me that she thought I was a nice, smart, funny guy, but she just wanted to make sure their wedding went off without a hitch. They promised to make it up to me, but I told them it wasn't necessary. Pam insisted on it and said I had to know how sorry she was. So, we made plans to have dinner at their expense at a very nice restaurant in the city this weekend. So in the end, I guess it wasn't anything I did, but I still feel kind of insulted. But I guess I get a free dinner out of it. Edit. There are a lot of comments here suggesting that I'm being naive, a doormat, and letting them off easy for basically calling me a creep. I won't lie, I think you all might be right. I do believe in taking the high road on most occasions, but I don't think this should be one of those times. As a side note, I don't believe that wanting to see the best in people or taking them at their word makes you naive. I had a call an hour ago with my project manager and explained the entire situation. She advised me to go to HR and make a complaint since it could lead to a hostile work environment. I have a meeting with them Monday. I don't really want to make a formal complaint. Just have it on file in case anything happens. To be honest, I don't think it will. Bob doesn't seem like that kind of person. But I've been wrong plenty of times before. So as per the advice here, I won't be going to dinner with Bob and Pam. I will, however, insist on a public apology that doesn't imply that I'm a creep. And I'm insisting on some fresh apple cider donuts. Not store-bought, but fresh. Oh, the twists and turns of this melodrama. Let's dive into this delightful cocktail of social etiquette and underlying prejudices, shall we? Pam. What a fascinating character. She paints this vivid picture of a wedding gone wild in 2019, with single men as the primary villains. And based on this singular experience, she decides to cast a wide net of exclusion over all single men, including you. Ah, the sweet taste of discrimination masked as precaution. It's astonishing, really. She might as well have handed out "No Single Men Allowed" badges at the door. She lumped all single men into one chaotic, hormone-driven stereotype. As if being single automatically means you're going to transform into a lecherous fiend the moment you step into a wedding. And Bob, our dear friend Bob, he vouched for you, sure, but ultimately he went along with this blanket ban, lying through his teeth to keep the peace. Oh, the irony. Trying to avoid a big deal, only to create an even bigger one. The absurdity of it all. Their apology is rich with contradictions. They claim it wasn't personal, yet Pam basically admits she didn't trust you to behave. And then there's the cherry on top, her sister, whom she wanted to protect from you. It's a tangled web of good intentions and gross misjudgments. You've got every right to feel insulted. Pam's actions were discriminatory, pure and simple. Singling out a group based on the actions of a few is the textbook definition of prejudice. And Bob, while apologetic, still played along with this farce. You deserve more than a fancy dinner or an apology. You deserve respect and to be treated as an individual, not judged by someone else's past experiences. Insist on that public apology. Make it clear that such discrimination is unacceptable and relish those fresh apple cider donuts as a small token of justice served. So, my friend, while you're missing out on that Wagyu steak, you're standing up for something far more important: fairness and respect. Bravo! The high road has its perks, and a few delicious donuts sound like a good start. Keep laughing in the face of such absurdity, and remember, sometimes it's the Joker who sees the truth in the madness. Unfortunately, there's an update to this story. Honestly, this whole thing is stupid as hell, and I really just want to move on and forget this whole thing happened. But reality is often disappointing. But first, to clarify a few things. I had to omit a lot of information because of character count in Am I the Asshole? I got a few posts and DMs asking why I felt entitled to be invited. I want to make it clear, I don't feel entitled to anything. Yes, I wanted to be invited, but as I said, if they had been honest with me from the beginning, I wouldn't have minded as much. They were allowed to do what they wanted on their wedding day. My problem was the subterfuge used to mask their choice. I'm usually not this indecisive, but this is a weird situation, and I don't exactly know how to handle it. I have never talked to Bob about women, ever. We didn't have that kind of relationship. None of the men on the team do. I think the women do it among themselves, but I can't be sure about it. I'm choosing to believe Pam about her experience dealing with men. If recent years have shown us anything, is that we need to believe women when they say they've been harassed or assaulted. The trusted men were made up of family members and groomsmen who were explicitly told not to flirt with the women. Pam had to turn away some of her single guy friends, and Bob had a shit ton of guy friends who wanted to go but were turned away. Bob and Pam's after party was going for a club vibe. Pam and some of her friends had very bad experiences being hit on at clubs, and Pam wanted to ensure their safety. She got the idea to exclude guys from going to women-only clubs. According to her, the vibe was so much better when women could get drunk and shake their asses and not be taken harassed by thirsty guys. The women at the wedding appreciated the lack of guys on the dance floor, but some complained about the lack of guys at the wedding. The wedding Royal Rumble happened at the wedding of one of her closest friends. The friend and her husband were devastated. Their wedding was ruined. It was so bad that they committed to having a 5-year vow renewal. Also, they were stuck with a large cleanup bill from the venue for damages. As for me, it was 70-30 on me being invited. It came down to that Pam didn't know me at all outside of my superb Super Mario Maker level design. Bob really fought hard for me, but Pam was too unsure, and then she remembered her sister. According to Pam, although she loves her sister to death, her sister is a huge celt and goes from guy to guy with the change of the wind. Apparently, I'm dangerously her type, and she would have been all over me. I asked what was wrong with that. She said her sister doesn't deserve a sweet guy like me, and she didn't want her to get her hooks in me. This sealed my fate. Bob said it would look horrible if I wasn't invited. That's when she came up with the compromise of taking the heat for it. He was just hoping that I wouldn't mind not going. Maybe I'm naive, but I'm choosing to believe Bob about feeling horrible about not inviting me. He seemed really broken up about it. Either he's a damn good actor, or he's telling the truth. He acknowledged that the way he handled it was terrible. According to him, there was no way of doing this that wasn't awkward. As for why he lied, apparently he panicked and couldn't think of anything better. Him getting mad at me for not going along with it wasn't necessarily about me, but being mad at Pam for putting him in that situation. He promised to make a full apology in front of the team when we're all together in the office again in a few weeks. Pam did say that she felt terrible about me and the other guys she had to exclude, but she would do it again to ensure the safety of the women around her. She was extremely insistent on making it up to me. She said that we should be friends going forward and offered a nice home-cooked meal to me, followed by some wine and a round of Mario Kart. I turned that down. That's when the expensive restaurant solution was offered. I accepted because it seemed like a fair compromise at the time. They didn't even have to really apologize for it, but they were offering me dinner, so I took it. In hindsight, I shouldn't have, but at that point, I just wanted to get out of there and go home. Now, for the update. After reading the comments calling me a doormat, I decided not to accept their dinner offer. I called Bob on his work phone to explain my change of heart. He was disappointed, but understood my reasoning. I parroted some of the talking points, and he said he understood. He wouldn't make a big deal out of it, and we could just move on. I thanked him for being cool about it, and he hung up. I thought that would be the end of it, but not 5 minutes later, Bob calls me back. I groan and pick up. Surprisingly, it was Pam on the other side. She didn't come at me hostile, but she did sound upset. She wanted to know why I didn't want to come anymore. I explained what I told to Bob about how they basically insisted I was a creep. I told her I didn't want to invalidate her experiences, but I didn't have to accept being told I'm a potential sexual predator. She said that she didn't mean it like that, and that she thinks I'm a good person, but couldn't risk it for her wedding. She was practically begging me to meet her in person to clear the air further. She kept on saying that we could be the best of friends if I'd give her a chance to explain better. I said no thanks, and that I had to go, but I'm sorry that she went through what she went through. I ended the call by saying, "BTW, I didn't even get those donuts." I then hung up. It's been quiet since then, but Bob is back in the office on Monday, and I fear Pam might do something drastic. I hope this thing is over, but I fear it might not be. In any case, I'll update if anything happens. The plot thickens. This tale of awkward invitations and social missteps just keeps delivering, doesn't it? Pam and Bob's rationale, while drenched in good intentions, still reeks of discrimination. Excluding single men based on a past disaster and some misguided notion of safety is frankly a bit over the top. It's like trying to prevent a car accident by banning all cars. They took a sledgehammer to a problem that needed a scalpel. Pam's past trauma at that royal rumble of a wedding certainly sounds dramatic, but to blanket ban single men, it's not just an overreaction, it's a poor reflection on their ability to trust and judge individuals. And let's not forget, you were lumped in with this lot despite your impeccable Mario Maker skills. Where's the justice in that? Their reasoning was personal and inherently biased. They might have meant well, but good intentions paved many a road to awkward hell. And Bob, oh dear Bob, caught in the crossfire, trying to play peacekeeper and failing spectacularly. His panic-induced lies and subsequent meltdowns only fanned the flames. The crux of the issue isn't about entitlement to an invitation. It's about being misjudged and misrepresented. You're not a villain for wanting to be included, nor for feeling hurt when you were effectively labeled a potential problem. Their backpedaling and attempts to make amends, while earnest, don't erase the initial sting of their judgment. Pam's insistence on friendship now feels like a desperate attempt to salvage her conscience. It's hard not to see the irony. In trying to protect her wedding from imagined threats, she created real hurt feelings and a messy situation. You did well to stand your ground. Accepting that dinner might have been a gesture of goodwill, but it wouldn't have erased the underlying issue. You deserve more than a superficial apology and a meal. You deserve genuine respect and understanding. As for the future, stay vigilant. Pam's track record suggests she might not let this go easily. But you've got the moral high ground here. Hold firm, demand respect, and keep those donuts in mind. Sometimes, a small token of fairness can taste sweeter than the grandest of gestures. And remember, laughter in the face of absurdity is the best medicine. Keep your wits about you, and let's see how this story unfolds. The world is a stage, and you've played your part brilliantly so far. Cheers to more unexpected twists and the hope that this madness might finally find some peace. Hey everyone. So, as I mentioned in my last update, I reached out to Bob and explained that I wouldn't be taking him and Pam up on their weekend dinner offer. He was disappointed but agreed with me. Pam called me back a few minutes later and fought hard to keep the plans. I declined and left it at that, hoping that would be the end of it. It wasn't, and now this silly drama continues. I went in 2 hours early on Monday so that I could potentially avoid a Bob after-work chat. Surprisingly, Bob came in an hour early, lining him up to potentially leave with me. Bob looked exhausted. And I don't mean tired, I mean mentally. I've seen Bob tired. We've worked many late nights on projects together. I've seen him hungover. This wasn't any of that. I almost can't describe it. He looked worn down. He shot me a sup nod, and I gave him one back, and we got to work. I kept my meeting with HR. Our HR rep is a wonderful lady named Sally. I told Sally the whole story, and she said that in her 15 years of HR work, she's never heard a more stupid story. We shared a good laugh, and she told me that it would be unofficially logged just in case Bob or Pam did anything crazy. She told me she thinks Bob is harmless, but to keep my eyes sharp. The rest of the day was uneventful. The most interesting thing that happened was that I saw Bob's face buried in his hands for a good minute or so. With 2 hours to go, I go to the break room for some water. Bob follows me in and approaches cautiously. I gave him a surprised look, and he just threw up his hands as if to say he was not hostile. He He said he knows I'm the last person I want to talk to right now, but he needs to talk to me. I said fine, but I angled us over to where the security camera was. Paraphrasing here, but he said, "Look, I won't ever speak to you again if you don't want me to, but let me buy you around and explain all of the things Pam didn't tell you when we met the other day." Bob sounded desperate, something I'd never seen from him before. He then hit me with the money quote. "Look, man, I could really use a friend right now, and I've always considered you a friend." Well, sorry to disappoint everyone here, but I'm a big gullible softy. I agreed to talk with him, but I told him that there would be absolutely no more meetings on this situation after this. He agreed and said he'd meet me after work. After work, we walked to our usual bar, the same one I met him and Pam the first time. I suspected Pam might be there, but she wasn't. Nevertheless, I kept my eye open for her. Once we sat down, Bob apologized yet again. This one seemed even more genuine than the first. I told him he didn't need to keep apologizing. I got it the first time. He said that he had to apologize because there's a lot more to the story about the wedding than I thought. Bob explained that he fought Pam like hell to get her to give up the single men's exclusion, but she was dead set on it. They argued for months, and a lot of people offered different solutions. Bob suggested a smaller wedding with only immediate family and friends, but Pam shot that down. She always dreamt of a big wedding with lots of people there, and a small wedding didn't fit her dream. Her parents said, "Why not hire a security guard?" Pam said that she wanted the possibility eliminated completely. She said that a few single men could stand to not be invited to a party for once in their lives. Bob said he had a lot of friends who wanted to come and that they would be hurt if they weren't invited. Pam said she was making sacrifices too. A lot of her guy friends wanted to come. Bob finally relented and said if the exclusion were to happen, he wanted nothing to do with that decision and wanted it known that it was out of his hands. Pam said she'd take the heat for it if it came to that, but didn't think people would go crazy over it. She also gave Bob the choice of their honeymoon destination since he was making a big sacrifice. They went to the French Riviera, if anyone is curious. Bob said the wedding, reception, and party were amazing. He said that so many women there were drunk off their excess and falling over themselves. Apparently they did feel safe, but a drunk vocal minority was complaining about the lack of hot guys to dance with. Bob even laughed because one of them was going around calling it a lesbian wedding since there were only women there. Oh, and some women were absolutely hitting on the handful of single guys there, but Pam didn't mind that as much. Bob said he wasn't rubbing it in, just setting up a point. After the honeymoon, they came home to what Bob described as a PR firestorm. Apparently, Pam had lied to her guy friends about why they weren't invited. One of her close friends let slip the real reason they weren't invited. They were effing furious. She was flooded with angry calls and messages from her friends about Pam essentially calling them potential sexual predators. Pam explained her position multiple times to her friends, but it fell on deaf ears. She has lost many friends over this. One of the guys said, "If you think that I'm a rapist, then why the fuck are we even friends?" Pam has been crying for days, and her work life has become terrible. She might even need to leave her job. By this point, Bob had a few hard drinks and was tipsy, so he let loose a little more. He said that her decision had cost him friends of his own. So many of his guy friends were furious to learn. They were excluded, and for the reason why. On the day of the wedding, about 6 or so of his closest friends who were excluded decided to go on a fishing trip as a screw you to Bob and Pam. The cherry on top of the petty cake? They decide to donate $500 and some items to a local woman's shelter. Bob was devastated, and none of those guys are returning his calls or messages. Even their families are upset with them over the exclusion. Pam's parents are publicly supportive, but chastise her behind the scenes. She doesn't have anyone but her bridesmaids and about 3 other friends who believe in her cause. Bob said at one point that Pam was hysterical and screaming, "Why can't anyone just understand my point of view?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but there was more to this crazy story. At this point, we were about an hour in, and Bob was nice and tipsy. So I pried for more information. Bob said that at first, Pam was sticking to her guns, that the exclusion was a good idea, but she was starting to waver a little bit. She said that most people understood where she was coming from, but that it was too heavy-handed and even a little sexist. Bob and Pam have had multiple blow-ups over this whole situation, and they're not in a good place right now. He said that instead of feeling giddy about his new wife and basking in the glow of being married, he's harboring a ton of resentment towards her because she's cost him a lot of his friends and ruined their lives over a stupid party. As for me, apparently Pam really likes me. One of her biggest regrets about this entire situation is not getting to know me better before the wedding. He said that Pam thinks I'm one of the coolest people she's ever met. I asked Bob how she made that determination from a 15-minute chat, and he laughed and said, "I don't know, man. She probably has a crush on you or something." I laughed, but that made the situation a little bit weird. As for Pam's sister, she is a slawteat, but not in the way you may think. Bob explained that Pam's sister, Beth, is by all accounts a very smart, successful, respectful woman. She just so happens to like sex. Bob explained that Beth is really into the kink scene and is into things like ethical non-monogamy. She frequently mentions her adventures to Bob and Pam, and it got them into the lifestyle as well. I was a little surprised, and I asked for clarification, and he said, "Yeah, she kind of got us into some of that stuff." I was shocked. I mean, how often do you hear that your co-worker is into BDSM? But hey, no kink shaming from me. So, it turns out that Beth isn't some soul-sucking, home-wrecking, out-of-control succubus. She's just a regular woman who loves sex. Bob said that Pam was scared that we would hit it off. We share many of the same interests and have similar personality types, according to Bob. Pam wasn't lying about that, nor that I was exactly her type. She likes tall guys, and from what I've heard, she'd have been all over me if she found out I was single. Well, now I was curious, so I asked Bob if he had a picture. He pulled up her Instagram, and I must say she was damn gorgeous. She looked like Pam's twin, only she was a little bit thicker. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty pissed at Pam all over again, LOL. Bob said that Pam has always been a little jealous of Beth. I don't know why. Pam is a stunner herself and looks just like Beth. Bob said that as a FU to Pam, he'd give her my Insta so we can DM each other, and he'd put in a good word for me. I thanked him profusely, LOL. He said that Pam was so desperate to make amends with me because I made a big impression on her, and she thinks that we'd be really good friends if we hung out. Bob said that she was just grasping at straws at this point. She's lost all of her friends, and she wanted to make another one. He said that he'd rein Pam in so that she wouldn't bother me anymore. By this point, Bob is more than tipsy. He says that he's having doubts about this marriage because the wedding process and aftermath have been a nightmare. He thinks it'd be really shallow to divorce her over this, but his life has been ruined by her choices. I was shocked, and he said, "Don't tell Pam, please." I swore that I wouldn't tell her anything. Bob paid for our drinks, and he was going to take public transportation home, but I told him he needs an Uber. He fought me on that, but I insisted, and he agreed to take one. I put him in the Uber and sent him on his way. An hour later, Pam texted me from his work phone. She told me, "Thank you for taking care of my hubby. You're a good person." I didn't respond. And that brings us to now. I hope that this is mostly the end of it, but it seems like Pam might be desperate and do something rash. In any case, I'll keep you fine folks updated. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to exclude single men from weddings. This tale has evolved into a rich tapestry of human folly, misjudgments, and unexpected confessions. Bob, the weary warrior, has been through the ringer, hasn't he? Mentally and emotionally battered, caught between his loyalty to Pam and his lost friendships. It's a tragedy worthy of Shakespeare. His desperate plea for a round of drinks, his open confession, it all speaks volumes about the depth of the mess they've found themselves in. Pam's strict no-single-men policy, born from past traumas and misguided attempts at control, backfired spectacularly. Her blanket ban not only ostracized decent folks like you, but also ignited a PR nightmare. It's poetic, really. By trying to protect her wedding from imagined threats, she turned friends into foes, and her dream wedding into a source of ongoing strife. Her reasoning, while stemming from a place of personal hurt, reeks of discrimination. The fallout from her actions, friends lost, trust shattered, and Bob's mounting resentment, underscores the consequences of such sweeping generalizations. She wanted to eliminate potential problems, but instead, she created a very real, very human disaster. And Bob's revelations about Pam's sister and their shared interests in the kink scene, well, that's a twist worthy of a late-night soap opera. It adds layers of complexity to Pam's character. She's not just a woman traumatized by a past event, but someone struggling with jealousy and control issues, even within her own family. Your stance, refusing further involvement and seeking to move past this debacle, is commendable. You've handled this with grace, despite the absurdity thrown your way. Bob's plea for friendship was touching, but you've rightly kept your distance, preserving your dignity amidst the chaos. Pam's desperation to mend fences speaks to her realization of the mess she's made. But it's not your burden to bear. She needs to sort out her issues without dragging you further into the quagmire. Bob's doubt about his marriage, while not your business, highlights the long-term impact of Pam's decisions. So what's next? Keep your guard up, stay professional, and let Pam and Bob deal with their own fallout. You've done your part, and more. If Pam does anything rash, you've got your bases covered with HR. This saga has been a wild ride, but you've navigated it with a clear head and a steady hand. Bravo to you for staying sane in this whirlwind of madness. Let's hope this is the end of the drama, but if it's not, at least you're prepared for whatever comes next. Cheers to maintaining your integrity and sense of humor through it all.